Welcome back to the European LCS studio. It's do or die for the Unicorns of Love as they are 0-2 down against Misfits Gaming, and Vedius is cracking some moves that perhaps you'd like to see the Unicorns crack on the Summoner's Rift.
Well, no, I'd like them to bring us to a game 5, like the analyst has promised us.
Well, then we could dance the Silver Scrapes.
Then we could. That's what the goal is. And if we do get Silver Scrapes, I promise you, ladies and gentlemen, I will give you a dance to remember. But for the time being, we have to remember the first 2 games of this series because it looked entirely one-sided in the favor of Misfits. They had a great bottom lane performance in game 1 that they transitioned into a fantastic mid game. In game 2, it was all about the mid lane. They played exactly towards their win conditions throughout this series, and let's see if they can do it again in game 3.
Let's get straight on into picks and bans. Unicorns of Love have decided to be on the red side. Not that sides seem to have helped them that much across the course of this series. It's interesting to note that Misfits actually have a pretty bad record when they are on the red side, Vedius.
But the great thing for Misfits right now is usually our stats team separates regular season stats from playoff stats.
100% win rate.
Yeah, right? So this is the thing for Misfits.
Of the split, right?
Coming into the playoffs, it's much better to start on a good stat set because you kind of start from 0 again. Now, that's not entirely true. The stats team, I can already feel getting angry at me. So let's just focus in on the bans that we've got, because for Misfits, they're going back to exactly what they did in Game 1.
And get rid of the LeBlanc and the Rakan and the Cho'Gath to start us off. That Game 1 strategy worked out so well for them. Why change what is working? And Alistair banned by the Unicorns of Love. That is a little bit different.
Now, the big thing here is that for the Unicorns of Love, they still have the option to counterpick things like the Zac. Bear in mind, I do want to mention that Caitlyn has not been picked yet in this series. She has not been banned. You can clearly see the nerfs to her on 7.16 were pretty effective in pushing her out of the meta, at the very least in this series. And the priority is still going to be on Tristana and Xayah, the 2 AD carries that have more risen to power as an answer.
And here's an answer that you like to see to that Tristana. The Sivir lock for Samux early on. We'll get into the actual meat and potatoes of that 1v1 and why you think Sivir is good later on. The Gragas pick as well for Xerxes, something he has been pretty strong on across the course of the split.
So far, Unicorns of Love, they're just mainly going for team fight scaling. They have good wave clear, they have good disengage and engage, they have good late game damage. A lot of things already being set up for them with just these 2 picks, but they've left the Orianna open. They banned this in game 1 and in game 2, and we know that Power of Evil is extremely comfortable on this champion. He does take a few creative paths with his building. We can talk a lot about it in-game because I got the insight, I got to chat with him, I got to learn about what he's thinking when it comes to building things like the Nash's Tooth, but that'll only be relevant if he actually decides to go for it. For the time being, Misfits, by locking in their 2 carries, they've said they're going for scaling and going for team fighting again. So to me, it feels like both sides building towards a very similar avenue, and Alfari, he's going to round things out with something that he's actually played a lot of this split.
I'm going to grab the Jarvan. 9 games on that, about a 50% win rate or so. Could, of course, still go to max law. We don't want to pigeonhole it into that top lane, but very much expect Alfari to play it. It's the Talon once again for Exile. Did get ahead with it in game 1, just wasn't able to snowball that advantage into any meaningful damage for his team.
I always think Talon is a risk, and while Exile has had a lot of success with it, it's something that you always have to play around, and you are relying on getting it ahead in the early game. We talked a lot about it in game 1. I think the matchup is even harder against an Orianna, simply because she has her own shielding. She can mitigate a lot of the trades that Exile will try to put out in the early game, and come the late game, sure, she doesn't have that much mobility, and if he gets on top of her, she's going to be in some serious trouble. The team fighting value that she brings is absolutely monumental, and it's one of Power of Evil's most comfortable champions. So big risk here for the Unicorns of Love, but they're sticking with their guns. They're going for comfort in terms of how they want to bring back this series.
That's what we wanted to see them do. It's what the analyst desk wanted to see them do as well, saying perhaps they should take the Vlad. They are going to get rid of the Jace and of the Poppy, whereas Misfits Gaming have removed Gnar from the pool. Zac still open, as we've said. Janna still open as well as a counter to that Zac.
But now I wonder if Unicorns are going to go for the Zac themselves. And remember, you could still put the Zac top or the Gragas top, and they are going to do it, so they're going to take that away. They're thinking that this Jarvan is in the top lane, and that Maxlaw will try and pick something else to the jungle, but I think you hit the money right there with the Jarvan jungle. I think it makes a lot of sense. It's a very old style combo where you have the classic ball delivery system with the Jarvan, where you put the ball on top of him, he takes it on his merry way, and then you have this massive wombo combo with the ultimate and the shockwave on top of it. So now we're looking at possible top laners for Alfari to pick up. There's the possibility of him going for something like a Camille. He may want to go for something a little more engage heavy like the Kled. He has a few options. He could go for the Maokai if he just wants to tank.
A lot of different options available. Misfits actually picking up the first Thresh of the series. Only been banned out in one game. Last game we just didn't see the priority towards it.
Wow.
It's going to be a Kayn. There is the option to play this top, but jungle seems to be more suited to Kayn.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think this is very much a Maxlaw pick. I think it's a little risky, personally. I think it does extremely well into the Gragas. Assuming that the Gragas is in the jungle, we'll have to wait and see as the swaps come out. Well, I actually think he does very well into a lot of tanks. In the early game, Xerxes, he's going to get low on health, especially with the recent nerfs that did happen to Zac in terms of his clear speed and the amount of damage that he puts out on his W. So you could look to punish it as Maxlaw, but they have no real frontline. Alfari, he's going to build kind of bruisery off-tanky. He's now their only real engage. And if Maxlaw wants to get into the fray, he's going to have to look for a flank, or he's going to need a Righteous Glory or someone else to help him get involved in things. Whereas for UOL, they have three big tanks, including the Tahm Kench that they ran in their compound. They have two major damage dealers in the Sivir and the Talon. And I think that in this comp, it's actually not that bad if Talon doesn't get an early lead, because you actually have so much late game insurance that Exalt can still have value in the later game when you look at all these squishy targets. Orianna, Kayn, Jarvan, going to be building kind of bruisery. Same for Tristana, like so many targets for the Talon to kill. I actually really like this draft coming out from the Unicorns, and I think this game was a bit of a risk.
Misfits do have a two-game cushion, of course. They want to round it out, but maybe picking up a slightly more unconventional composition doesn't harm them too much in terms of the series as a whole. One game away from the semi-finals and from a position in Paris, whereas the Unicorns of Love are standing on a precipice. Their best year thus far, or knocked out in quarterfinals once again? That's the question on everyone's lips as we get into the Summoner's Rift once again. The fans are on their side. They know who they want to win this game. If you want a best-of-5 series to go all the way as well, you'll be cheering for the Unicorns at home, but I'm sure there are many Misfits fans who just want to see this one done and dusted. And I want to come back to Maxlaw here, especially Vedius. First time he's played this Kayn, this split. What is he looking to do, and how can he impact the map on this jungler?
Invade and kill. That will be his game plan. I'm curious as to where he will start. I feel like the best jungle path for him would be to start bot side and look for an invade towards top side. Or you start bot side and then you go for an invade onto the enemy blue and you steal it away, knowing that your Orianna can get an early push. The risk is that your bot lane might not have the same kind of pressure because you're going up against a Sivir who naturally pushes very hard in the early game. So I think Maxlaw is going to try and look to invade whichever lanes have push priority, and I think he's going to have a greater chance of doing that if he invades through the bot side. But invading is the name of the game for Maxlaw. And something that Zeus here has been very vocal about with his Kayn play is that if you're not invading on Kayn, you are not playing the champion properly. So I feel like Zeus is anticipating this. You can see the setup from the Unicorns of Love trying to react in case he's trying to make that kind of play.
No help for either of the junglers to start it off. They should be able to clear these camps pretty effectively by themselves. There's going to be a little bit of action in the bottom lane as Hansama and Ignar look for the early push priority that will help their jungler get a little bit of pressure in the lane once again. The third time we've seen Hansama on this Tristana seems to be a pick he's very much favoring at the moment.
Well, why try and fix something that ain't broken? But also, I feel that Tristana becomes the next priority champion after Kalista. And arguably that you can say that Tristana's on a similar level to Xayah, maybe a little bit higher. But in this setup, I think that it is the perfect champion for Hansama. It gives him strong laning phase, gives him good scaling, and he doesn't really have that many bad matchups, aside from possibly Sivir. Because we had a lovely tweet here from Jankos.
Jankos thinking that a reverse sweep will not happen today. We have seen one already this morning as SKT reverse swept KT. 2 in a day would be glorious for all of the League of Legends fans around the world. Maxwell is going to start to look for the invade after taking away the blue. However, Xerxes has already picked up his red and is down towards the bottom side of the map.
I think Maxwell's aware of this, though, so his focus will be on the Krugs. He will get a fair amount of XP from these, and it's not too uncommon, but it looks like that in the early game, he doesn't want to try and get in Xerxes' face. He may even look for an early dive top. Very, very, very risky against a Gragas with only a Jarvan. Let's see how they decide to set things up here.
Alfari has been able to harass it down, and of course Maxwell has the Shadow Step, so can lose turret aggro by going into a wall. Vizicachi is going to spot out Maxwell with the ward, but Maxwell will just get himself away after invading for the first time.
Now, Misfits know exactly where Xerxes is, because they were able to drop that ward near the Krugs. But UOL also have information that Maxwell has just gone back to base. So he's going to complete a very early Tracker's Knife, which will enable him to set up vision early on, ideally in the enemy jungle. Because one of the big things you have to remember about Zac is he can gank from pretty much anywhere. He has a lot of room because of the range of his E. To make all kinds of annoying plays.
Alfari going aggressive onto Chachi in the top lane. Chachi will be able to keep himself alive for the time being. But this is a story we've seen over the course of this series. Alfari actually stepping up a lot more. We did not expect him to. He's 10th in CS differential at the 10-minute mark in the regular split, even though he gets a lot of pressure from Maxlaw usually.
I agree with you, Menek. I feel like it's one of the interesting stories of Alfari where in spring there was a lot of hype around him. We had high expectations of him. He came in, and even though he was playing a lot of tanks, he was actually extremely dominant. He was one of the best performing top laners in spring, and then coming into this split, there were a lot of changes clearly with bringing in a jungler that in the past he used to play fairly regularly with. And there was still a fair amount of hype, but that very quickly died as they weren't able to make much happen. But in this series so far, he has been very impactful, yet to die, been a huge contributor to a lot of the team fights, and he's been finding some very nice solo kills and solo play, along with holding his own against Vizicachi in the 1v1.
You can see Chachi respects the damage from the Jarvan double cloth armor in that top lane. And 5 minutes in, all square between these two teams. A slight advantage for Misfits as they have got some CS ahead. We do just have a pause coming out. Looks like PoE may have an issue with his monitor, or with something on the screen at least.
Yeah, we will update you once we have a little bit more information.
It's just like, I haven't got my Nash's tooth yet. What's going on, guys? I do want to actually come to PoE on this Orianna, though.
Okay, go.
He's very well known for his Orianna.
Yes.
And he's an incredibly good Orianna player.
Indeed.
But he doesn't stick to usual conventions, Vedius.
No, he does not. One of the big things about him is that he actually likes to go for an early tier into Archangel's Staff, followed by a Nash's Tooth. Now, a lot of you might be thinking,
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, so the thing is, I don't know if he'll do it this game. Usually he goes for Nash's Tooth when he's actually playing against a lot of tanks. Because one of the big question marks around mid laners, right, is do you want burst damage or do you want sustained damage? And typically on champions like Victor, Orianna, Syndra, you kind of want burst damage. So you go for a conventional Melonomicon, maybe you go for a Haunting Guise into the Liandry's, and then you round things out with a Void Staff. Or maybe you go for the Luden's Echo. Either way, they're all big, beefy AP items that, unfortunately, they don't have a huge amount of impact damage onto tanks. So Paravivo, he likes to shift up onto things like the Nash's Tooth, which actually gives him a lot more DPS overall.
Did have a minor client issue, but it's all sorted. We're going to get back on into the action with a gank in the mid lane as Xerxes jumps in. Exile is low. Paravivo unable to finish him off as he will jump across the wall.
So yeah, there's a lot to the Nash's Tooth, and we can talk more about it if it ends up getting built. There's no point going in all this long rant if he doesn't actually end up building it, but there's a very good chance, and the large part is because in big team fights, he feels that the burst is not as valuable against high health, high resistant targets compared to consistent overall damage that he can get from his basic attacks, from the passive on Orianna, along with the additional attack speed that he feels offers him a lot of value. So we can just keep track of it, and with 3 tanks, he could very well go down that path.
Something else we need to keep track of is how often Maxlaw is able to get these invades off. It's actually about 26 CS ahead
Wow.
of Xerxes at the moment. And you can see that reflected in the gold lead as well, Vedi. It's 800 gold when there've been no kills, there've been no towers, no dragons or objectives taken for either team yet.
Yes, leads building up across the board in favor of Misfits. You can see 300 more or less on the mid lane, on the jungle, and a bit of it coming out from the top lane as well. So small leads starting to accrue in favor of Misfits, but nothing too substantial yet.
In the bottom lane, things look pretty even. I want to come back to this Sivir pick into the Tristana as well, Vedi. Xerxes is near the mid lane, doesn't quite look like he's going to go for a gank. You've discussed at length and put on Twitter and tweeted out and said to many people, oh, you know, Sivir's a great pick into Tristana, it's the best. I'm such an intelligent man and I'm going to slow down a little bit.
Slow down a little bit. I was mostly just that I was surprised as to why we hadn't been seeing more Sivir in the meta. Largely because I think that in terms of wave clear, in terms of team fighting, in terms of laning, I felt that she's pretty good. And I think she's also a decent pick into Tristana, largely because he's not going to die, don't worry about it. Largely because of the spell shield that's very predictable to deal with when it comes to the E, the explosive charge. So I think it does fine. I think it can match, and you can already see during the laning phase too that Tristana is regularly getting pushed underneath the tower, and with the peel that you have from Tahm Kench, that 2 versus 2 is actually very favorable for the Unicorns of Love that will scale nicely and offer a lot of team fight damage later. The big risk is you have no escapes, you have no dashes, you have no jumps, which is what a lot of the European AD carries really like right now. And when you're going up against a Jarvan, you become a very big target that Jarvan's going to want to slam dunk.
Did see both the supports roaming up towards the mid lane. Hylissang's gone back down as the lane was pushed in by Hansama, but Ignar and Maxlaw, once again, it's this jungle proximity, this duo that we talk about, Vedius, that is so strong. And Vedius, in game 1, you brought up an interesting statistic saying 15% of the time we see Maxlaw and Ignar together, and it's not going to happen again. Xerxes jumps in, the Ocean Drake goes out, and Alfari makes a great play in the top lane to get himself to safety. You smooth. Just say the stat, because they want to fight. Whenever I say the stat, you say it. I believe in you, Vedius. You'll do this.
So first I'm going to break down what happened in the top lane. Alfari used his ulti to get away from the Chachi ult, and then flash to lock Chachi inside the ulti, and then get away from Xerxes too. Beautiful setup.
Invade as well from Maxlaw. This is what we wanted to see.
Nice, because he knew that the jungler was topside after they just got Drake. Overall, Misfits playing this through the game extremely well, but yes, let's talk about the stat. Because Medic, the thing is, one of the things I criticized Misfits for in the early game was that Ignar and Maxwell, they don't spend enough time together. Because last split, Ignar and Kakao were this really powerful roaming duo. They were the reason why Misfits were known as such a good early game team in the past. But coming into this split, that hasn't really happened. The synergy between Maxlaw and Ignar just wasn't the same. Their jungle proximity was so much lower. It was down to 15% ranked 10th in the league compared to the second of Kakao and Ignar. Whereas so far in this series, and in game 1 specifically, they had a 20.7 jungle proximity with each other, which is pretty much what Ignar and Kakao had of last split. So one of the weaknesses that I was wondering they would be able to fix, they've been able to rectify. Medic.
How do they not fight? Like, the 3 times I've tried to introduce that statistic, they have fought every single time.
I have cast many a time with Quickshot, young Medic. And what you have to understand is that he has an art for figuring out the best time as a fight now occurs in the middle lane.
Shadow Assault, Power of Evil gets ignited. Here comes Maxlaw as well. And PoE will get away. Just to clarify, just to break down that exactly, what it means is that Ignar and Maxlaw are spending a lot more time together in the early game in this series than they have been across the course of the split. And we were wondering if that was where Misfits' early game weakness was coming from as well, not having the jungle and the support roam together.
Exactly, and the crucial part there is the fact that the support is roaming. Because I felt that Ignar was spending a lot of time babysitting and protecting Hansama, and because Hansama always had his support around, he felt like he could be more aggressive in lane. They could look to try and make stuff happen and try and support the playmaking nature that Ignar naturally has. But Ignar in the series has been roaming around the map a lot more. Hansama and Ignar have also been performing well in the 2 versus 2, which just goes to show how much, as a team, Misfits has developed. You know, we've talked a lot about Misfits, right? And they are winning this series so far, so it's very easy to talk about them. But for the Unicorns of Love, I actually really like their draft in this Game 3. I think that they've got really good team fighting. Their laners aren't so weak that they're all just going to dramatically fall behind. As you can see, Gragas is holding his own, the Civ is actually slightly ahead, and the Talon, considering this matchup, is doing much better than you would typically expect. So I think that they're doing fine. They're scaling very well into the mid part of the game, but Exile, he's just used one of his dashes.
Hylissang's here as well, and Maxwell has to flash away because Xerxes was waiting in the wings. Still a 600 gold lead for the Misfits, but Unicorns of Love are getting to this scaling point. We said we don't mind if they get to the late game with a Sivir, with a Talon, with these 3 tanks as well. They can be very powerful if they get to those traditional Unicorns of Love team fights that we really want to see from them in this series.
And I feel like for Maxwell, when you're playing this Kayn, he's very likely going to go to Rust, who is a very good tank killer. That's important to recognize. But Kayn in the early game is very much an early game focused jungler. He's about trying to snowball, trying to invade, trying to deny the enemy jungle as much as possible. And he has stolen a few camps. He's been developing a very healthy CS lead. But which lane is he really trying to snowball here? Because you don't typically snowball an Orianna. Tristana, Thresh, sure, that could be a good lane, but you're going up against Tahm Kench, Sivir. That's a really difficult lane to gank. And in the top lane, Jarvan versus Gragas, sure, that'd be great, but Gragas has a lot of self-defense tools. He has the ultimate, he has a dash, he also has the increased resistances on his W. He's got a lot. So there's no real lanes for Maxwell to try and snowball, and he hasn't really been shutting down Xerxes. And this is why I was a little bit concerned about this pick. And if he gets to Rust, he will have a lot of value later on into the game, but there's a long way to go.
Good dodge from Power of Evil into the Shockwave as well, and here comes Maxwell onto Exile. Shadow Assault, they're trying to turn the damage back around. Exile able to escape. Xerxes jumps away as well, and the TP comes in because Hylissang and Samux have joined the fight. Here comes the teleport from Alfari. Misfits won it 5v5 in the mid lane. First blood to PoE, and Samux will fall as well. Misfits with 2 kills in mid.
5 members of Misfits suddenly appear in the middle lane, respond to a gank that happened from Xerxes, and they're the ones to get 2 very quick kills. So we can see Power of Evil here, he's forced to use his flash, he knows he's in danger, so UOL, they just start to disengage, but Maxwell, he sees an opportunity with Power of Evil landing a great shockwave. They know they can turn this in their favor, but then all of a sudden, Hylissang and Samux come up from the lane, expecting Vizichachi to TP in as well, but they don't have the support from their top laner. Their mid and jungle can't help them. Hansa and Ignar are right behind, and that means that all 5 members of Misfits just suddenly collapse on the bottom lane of UOL. They end up falling, and now Misfits get that early lead, and I was wondering where it was going to come from, but Maxwell's able to find it.
Helps when the enemy team barrels 4 people into the mid lane, and Vizichachi did have the teleport as well, so he could have joined. Perhaps slightly miscommunication there from the Unicorns, but now we're going to see the first items being hit for Misfits with a 2,000 gold lead. You've got a Rod of Ages completed onto Power of Evil. The Duskblade for Exile, though, is there as well.
Now, I've never been a fan of Rod of Ages on Orianna. It makes sense in this matchup. I think that for the champion that she is, it delays her spike a little bit too much, but he wants health, and he still needs mana to come from somewhere. So basically, he's not going to go for the Morellonomicon. He'll likely just go for a second damage item, which in this instance will be the Nash's Tooth, because he still needs cooldown reduction to come from somewhere, and he wants something that's good against tanks. So he's very much building towards sustained DPS, and it's more of a late game build. And what you'll notice is that in actual fights, he's just going to be using autos a lot more and fighting a lot more. So now here comes Xerxes. He's trying to punish the no flash.
Can't land the stretching strike, the shockwave on 2, and Maxwell's just around the corner. Let's bounce, brings him back. Here comes the TP and the Tahm Kench. Umbral Trespass onto Exile, but Maxwell kills him. And now we're going to see the UOL re-engaged. Knock back onto PoE. Xerxes jumps in the plane, knocks him away. The stretching strike, 2 kills to the Unicorns, and they answer in the mid lane.
Now 5 members of Unicorns are in the mid. Hylissang uses ultimate to bring Samux up there, but it looks like Unicorns are going to get themselves a mid tower alongside the 2 early kills that they were able to get. They're going to close the goal gap and put their name back in the game.
And we said you cannot count the Unicorns out until that Nexus falls. They looked like they were falling behind, but they have an answer to every situation.
So let's see. You can already see that the Thresh and the Tristana are on their way mid, but they can't get there faster than Hylissang can. Now the bleed from Exile's passive, along with the Ignite, was enough to get the kill down onto Maxwell. He didn't get the heal out in time. He thought he was safe. He thought he had enough HP. Surprise, surprise, he didn't. Still very squishy in this early game. And with no flash from Power of Evil, there's nothing left that he can do against 5 members. So while Misfits were faster to read the play, they just couldn't actually make the response fast enough because they didn't have the TP from Alphari, and they can't really do anything about the ulti from Hylissang.
Unicorns did pick up the Infernal Drake off the back of that as well. They equalized the gold, only about 300 between these two teams. And Unicorns with a more scaling composition and looking like they can get towards that later game 3-tank team fight that they really want.
It's looking good for the Unicorns of Love. This slight gold deficit is a much better position for them to be in. And while they failed a few early ganks, they've still been able to hold their own. And now, like, we have to come back to it again, this Kayn pick from Maxlor, and wondering how much value it's going to have as the game progresses. We've got to keep tracking it as he might look for another gank in mid. No, he's just going to come help with the push. Has
got to rust, as you would say in your Welsh accent now.
Oh, it's rast, mate.
Rast.
Rast.
Let's not do that anymore. Misfits going up towards the top side as well with their AD carry and support. We see Unicorns of Love answering this. Chachi having a good lane in that bottom lane, which was previously the top lane now as he's beginning to force Alphari back. Alphari has got the Phage, the Tiamat, and a Kindle Gem, so he's not worried too much about the lane, but it's good for Unicorns to see Chachi playing more like the player of the split that he was in Spring.
Certainly the case. Unicorns, they're going to need him to be stepping up in this third game if they want to stand a chance of making it to Paris. Remember that for any Unicorns fans that are worried that, oh, if Unicorns lose this, will they still be able to make it to Worlds? How you qualify for Worlds is the winner of the summer split along the second seed is the one with the number of championship points. We don't have time because the fight's breaking out.
Knock up onto Samus, onboard trespass as well. Xerxes and Exile have joined the fight. Maxlor perhaps overextended. Xerxes going to get the knock up. Maxlor knocked back. Xerxes has the flash. Exile going deep, trying to get the kill onto Maxlor. Can't get there in time. He'll jump the wall with the play. Backhand Samalo as well. Eventually, Exile will fall and the Misfits will get one.
Exile came very close to killing a lot of people in that exchange, but really good use of abilities. A knock-up from Maxlor. The jump from Hansama, the ulti at just the right time. Everything goes their way. They find a good fight. And now they'll be able to get the Rift Herald and the top tower as Hylissang has just been caught out.
Yeah, maybe get Hylissang as well. He has to burn the flash. Samix was just around the bend if they were able to get anything out of it, but for another tower force, and Misfits will get there first of the game.
And what we're seeing is that both teams are using their teleports whenever it is up because they know they have the TP advantage. So Misfits made the TP play in mid as a response to UOL trying to make something happen, but then it backfires. Then UOL are the ones to use the Chachi ultimate along with the Gragas teleport in the middle lane to set up a gank onto Power of Evil, and now we're seeing Misfits set up a TP play in the enemy half of UOL's jungle, and it's Misfits that now once again find themselves in the lead. So you can see here, 2 members of Misfits come in from the top flank, you have Maxlor come in from the river, he uses his ulti a little early because he doesn't actually get any health back, and because he's so squishy he ends up collapsing. Then you have the TP in from Alphari who zones away multiple members, and then a really good play from Ignar along with the knockback from Hansama just keeps every member of Misfits alive for long enough to get a kill.
We have seen XR move into this side lane though. When he played in game 1, this is what we wanted to see. Shadow Assault, flash away. And Samix and Hylissang, that Abyssal Voyage has been a strong tool for them. They haven't found as much as they would like from it.
I love these plays from both teams. The use of Abyssal Voyage, the cross map that both teams recognize they have to have a numbers advantage, knowing that they'll be able to win a fight. It's just really fun and interesting League of Legends to talk about because now Chachi's in a great position to slowly take down that bot tower. Misfits, they've actually only equalized the tower even though they hold a gold lead, and now Maxwell, he's looking for a gank bot.
Chachi, Alphari there as well. The explosive cast has to flash away from the Cataclysm. Misfits will burn that. Hans Summer's gone on to Exile though. The Buster Shot will knock him away. Exile trying to escape, but he can't get away from Hans Summer. Another kill for Misfits.
Exile can't afford to be making these mistakes in a crucial game 3 where your trip to the semifinals in Paris are on the line. Dying off in a side lane to the AD carry of all people is not acceptable. You cannot afford to be making those kind of mistakes. And Misfits, they get another advantage. They have pressure top. They now know that they can keep Maxlor in the bottom lane to assist with Alphari as he takes this tower, and that one death is going to sway the gold very heavily in the favor of Misfits.
After this turret, there will be 4,000 gold ahead at the 20-minute mark. They've got their carries online as well. Power of Evil, 2 and 1, going for a Zhonya's Hourglass second item. You've got the Tristana, Hansama, now with 2 items spiked, the Static, the Infinity Edge. We've talked about it so often, Vedius, that if you can get a Tristana online, you do scale well into the later game, even if the Unicorns of Love have these 3 tanks.
I mean, the late game for Misfits isn't exactly a bad one. It's just going to be difficult when you play up against 3 tanks. That's the big concern that I have for Misfits' composition. But as you rightly said, if this Tristana is able to get to that late game point, well, she'll hit through anything. Especially with the Last Whisper done, Power of Evil. He's actually going for more of a team fight build. Rod of Ages into the Zhonyas. He's showing a lot of respect towards Exile. And I guess this game he's playing more towards a utility bot. He's saying, I'm going to provide shields, I'm going to provide speed ups, I'm going to provide a pull-in with my ulti. I'm just there to add support to my team, and Maxlor and Alfari can be one of the main damage dealers.
Yesterday, for Giants Gaming, when they played up against NIP, we did actually see Jizuki play the Orianna and build an Ardent Sensor. Yes, for the shielding. I doubt that's going to happen in this game. Not sure that's Power of Evil's style, but you never know. Unicorns of Love are looking for their second dragon of the game, but Hansama is just pounding away on those turrets in the side lane. 2 members of the Misfits are here. Shadow Assault, Hansama has to use the heal, the knockback. Exile might escape, as Ignar was there for the time being. Hansama almost dies. The dragon will fall. That's a Mountain Drake for UOL, but they do lose a tower because of it.
That Warlord's Bloodlust is what kept Hansama alive. If he did not get that burst of lifesteal at the very end, he actually would have lost his life to Exile there. But instead, he gets away with his life. They get a tower. Exile loses the Ignite Summoner spell, which means his kill threat is going to go down. But Unicorns of Love, they are able to answer with a dragon. So they have the Infernal, they have the Mountain, and they still have this ability to scale into the later game. Civis still doing very well for herself. And you have these frontline tanks that are getting tankier and tankier as the game progresses. But it's going to take at least another 8 to 10 minutes before this Unicorns of Love lineup really comes online, especially with the gold deficit that they're currently in. When you have double Black Cleaver, nearly a 3rd item done on Hansama, and a Zhonya's finished for Power of Evil, you have to be concerned if you're the Unicorns of Love. I feel like it'd be dangerous to try and force too much from happening right now.
But that's what the Unicorns like to do. That's their plan. And they tried to engage onto Hansama, who did have to flash away. Both these teams coming into this series with a plan to make worlds. At the moment, Misfits seem to be on course. The Unicorns need to change some of their priorities. Exile's knocked up. Will Shadow Assault. Maxlor able to continue the jump on. Exile turns it back, but the Umbral Trespass will mean that Exile dies. And now Alfari goes in with the Cataclysm. Devour on Hilly. Here comes the TP. Chachi, you might want to cancel that. He does. And Misfits able to get another kill and burn the flash from Hylissang.
So Exile gets caught once again. 3 deaths on the mid laner for the Unicorns of Love. Misfits are grouped up as a 5-man unit, and they have their eyes on the Baron, but they're actually going for a pick onto Xerxes.
Xerxes does have the flash. Let's bounce across the wall. Can flash towards the turret, but it's non-existent. Here comes the Abyssal Voyage. Maxlor might get caught out a little bit. Double knockup with the Blaze Reach. And here comes the Shockwave. Only hits Hylissang. Samux tries to get away, but you can't escape from Hansama. Now the Unicorns are in all kinds of hurt. Misfits with a double.
You can see the smiles on the coaching staff of Misfits as they win another fight over the Unicorns of Love. Things are starting to look dire. The Unicorns, who finished 2nd in the regular season, who were in the finals of the spring split, are being routed by this Misfits squad, who are right now taking the Baron. The hook has been landed onto Chachi.
Chachi is going to get locked up across the wall. Here comes Xerxes as well. The Baron's being stopped. Exile jumping in. Can he do something with the Shadow Assault? He's on Hansama. He kills him. And Chachi's got away. Maxlor looking for the chase. Can't get there. Xerxes is going to get knocked up. And perhaps Misfits can get at least 1 kill out of this. They will kill Xerxes after he goes through the cell division. Alfari secures it. Misfits 8-3 up. 5,000 gold ahead.
Unicorns of Love stop the Baron, though. That's the most important thing. Misfits, they didn't want to run the risk of Chachi getting a steal acting as a distraction to allow Xerxes to come in and take it away from Misfits. Give that 1-win condition back to the Unicorns. And we have to backtrack a lot because this is where it all started. 4 members of Unicorns, they wanted to try and help, but a fantastic knockup from Maxlor onto Exile interrupts his jump over the wall, and he realizes that he's in no man's land now. There's no way he's getting out of that. He didn't have his flash available. who did have his flash, though, was Hylissang, keeping his AD carry alive. But this meant that the Unicorns, they lose their TP, they lose pressure, and then here, Misfits, they go on the chase. They want to try and force Xerxes out of the fight. If they get a kill here, it guarantees the Baron. Unfortunately for them, they're not quite able to catch him, but they are able to catch onto Samux and Hylissang. The chase keeps going. Misfits find kill after kill. They work their way towards the Baron, and they just choose to play it safe. You can just see the look of dismay on Samux's face. Things are looking rough in the Unicorns camp.
Good stop from Unicorns on this Baron, though. Chachi does manage to actually get out of this, surprisingly.
Not a huge amount to break down here. Really good kill from Exile on the back line. And Chachi also very barely able to get away. I don't think he should have come back into the fight, but either way, he does get away with his life. So does Exile, walks away with the kill too. And now we're back into the game. Catches up on the state of things, Medic.
I can do that, Vedius. I can read the numbers off on the screen. It's what our play-by-plays do, but perhaps it's not. As Exile pops the Shadow Assault, Maxwell's down low. Unicorns looking for the engage off the side. Alfari jumps in, Maxwell there as well. Xerxes with the Let's Bounce. Unicorns trying to find a fight in the mid lane. This has saved them time and time again, but can it save them today? They've lost one already, and Alfari wants a little bit more. Hylissang taken low. He pops the thick skin, but Power of Evil pops him. Misfits on the engage. They get a double PoE, and Sama goes in. Can't quite get the kill, but he'll take down Visit. Chachi falls for it, but 4-for-1 in favor of the Misfits.
Misfits get everything that they could possibly want. They do lose their AD carry, but they're likely going to get the Baron off the back of it. Who would have thought that it would be Unicorns of Love to fall at the hands of a team fighting Misfits? We have been wondering for such a long time how you define this Misfits squad, and it feels like prep and practice is all they needed to become a top team here in Europe. Beautiful knock-up there from Maxwell, hitting 4 members. The percentage health damage he does on this Kayn is doing so much work in the later game. He draws so much focus, then he gets all that health back and he can start the fight once more. And once the front line is gone for the Unicorns, Misfits can continue the chase. Yes, Hansama, he gets a little greedy at the end, but it doesn't matter. He did his job. He dealt the deeps. And now they've got the Baron. They've got an 8,000 gold lead, and Misfits are looking to clean sweep Unicorns.
We wondered if this composition could deal with tanks in the late game. Well, Misfits are able to find pick after pick after pick. Maxwell dodging around the fight incredibly well. Alfari still unkilled across the entire series as well, Vedius. Misfits, up until this point, have not had a second carry on their team. It's been the PoE show, but this time it's the Misfits show.
Oh, it certainly is. This team has really come together. They've done everything that they needed to in every single game. They played towards their win conditions every single time. And yes, Unicorns, they've made a few mistakes that made it easier for Misfits. In game 1, the bot lane did not perform its best. In game 2, that was all Misfits. They played exactly the way and what they needed to. In game 3, again, Misfits, they found a few punishes, but UOL, they fought back this time. They were able to utilize their own TP plays. They made Hylissang work. But then they found fight after fight, and they're going to find another one.
Hook onto Chachi. Hansama just absolutely shredding through the Gragas, and they're looking to shred through these towers as well. The first inhibitor tower, their target. Misfits looking to close this game out in the next couple of minutes.
There's the Nash's Tooth completed on Power of Evil. 3 items done, inhibitor down. Misfits, 5 members strong. They have a minion wave on the bottom lane. They still have a minute and a half left on the Baron. This is not what I was expecting from today's series, but it is looking convincing as Misfits are on track to make their way to the semifinals and their way to Paris.
A 10,000 gold lead at the 30-minute mark, and the Unicorns are falling by the wayside. Misfits on their second push with this Baron buff. Still a minute and a half on it. Vedius as Alfari jumps in. Cataclysm. Shockwave as well does not quite connect, but here's the knock-up onto Exile. He tries to get on the backline, but he's taken out before he can get anywhere near. And this is the second inhibitor tower falling, and perhaps even the game for Misfits.
Everything that Misfits could want, they have. They still have 5 members alive. Only Nexus towers stand in their way while they still have Baron-empowered minions. Medic, the 1-year plan was there for Misfits. We wondered which of these 2 teams will look likely to go to Worlds, and while there's still a long way to go, Misfits, are looking to commit to that one-year plan as UOL go for a fight.
Tiller, Sam, and Samix, this is the last chance saloon for Unicorns, but Ignar wants to re-engage. The TP in behind, the hook does not connect as Hansama jumps forward. Alfari there as well does not have the Cataclysm, and it's a 3v4 for the Misfits, but they just keep pushing forward and forward and forward, and the Unicorns have to rampage their way away. The Misfits looking to close out this game, Vedius.
Hanso and Ignar, they don't have a chance to go back because of the interrupt from the Unicorns, but Alfari has TP'd back in. Both Power of Evil and Maxlaw are on their way. There's a big minion wave top, super minions in bot and mid. Misfits, they land the hook.
Ignar with another hook. He's hit them time and time again. Xerxes jumps in. Let's Bounce brings back 2 Unicorns and the last stand of this series. Samix has killed Ignar, but here come Maxlaw and Alfari. The UK duo with the Shockwave PoE joins them up. Chachi's dead. So is Xerxes. So are the Unicorns. And Misfits are going to close out this game. A triple kill for Hansama. And you may call them Misfits, but today they are conquerors as they take down UOL 3-0.
Misfits Gaming with the clean sweep over the Unicorns of Love. They defy expectations. Not many people expected much. I didn't expect much. I thought that the Misfits Gaming squad had a lot of weaknesses that they needed to rectify coming into playoffs, and they rectified them all. Alfari stepped up, the bottom lane stepped up, they worked well together. Power of Evil was able to get revenge over his former team, who he lost to in the semi-finals of last split. Misfits Gaming have committed to that one-year plan, and this is their first step towards Worlds.
You can see as well the sadness in the Unicorns' eyes. It's not over for them. They can still make Worlds. Championship points obviously may play in their favor, but the gauntlet is there as well, Vedius, that they can run.
But you got to remember that, sure, Worlds is definitely the end goal, but being champions of Europe is something that the Unicorns of Love have strived for an extremely long time. And once again, they fall short. We said that this could have been the best year for the Unicorns of Love to date. But this just looks like their first year. They get second in spring, they fall short in summer. And 2017, they're not able to make it.
Seems like it's the year of the Misfits as they take a very surprising win. And you look across them and you see members who haven't stepped up this split, who haven't performed to their expectation. Hansama in particular thrived on the idea that he was one of the best AD carries in Europe. And until game 1, a lot of people doubted that, but that game 1 was a turning point for Misfits and a turning point for Hansama.
He's going to get the opportunity now to play in his home crowd. Paris, where the third place match and the final will take place. By getting a spot in the semi-final, you guarantee a spot to play on that stage. And now it is not confirmed who their opponents are. Depending on the winner of tomorrow's series between Splice and G2 will determine who their opposition is in the semi-final. Largely because of cross-group play and all that jazz. And
let's not talk about that. Let's let the AD talk about that. Misfits Gaming got a great start to the playoffs with a win against the Unicorns of Love. Let's leave it to the analyst desk to wrap up the series.
Well then, Medic, thank you. A 3-0 sweep by Misfits. I am honestly a bit shocked. Justice was the only one that had pegged Misfits as the winners, and that was even with Unicorns of Love taking one game. So I have to say, how much of an upset is this for you guys, the fact that Misfits are able to win this cleanly, the Fish Show?
It's quite an upset. For me personally, I thought Unicorns of Love would have way more to actually do in this series here. Once we started seeing like game 1, we actually kind of joked about being like, oh, we also want to pick Misfits now because that game 1 was pretty one-sided, and it became very one-sided, and the draft was really good. And game 2, you got a little bit more used to it. I feel like the series kind of set us up for this now, that we are not surprised going, after they win the third game, but coming into it, I did not expect 3-0 Misfits.
Well, there were a couple of things that we were looking at. Can there be a second carry for Misfits besides Power of Evil? The entire team stepped up. I have to give a special shout out to Hansama, though. I mean, in this last game, he was great. He was great in game 2 as well. And the fact that he was able to step up in light of qualifying for Paris, as he's French as well, will be very important. But what can we put our finger on that was so much better from Misfits today than Unicorns of Love? Is it all really draft, Jesse?
I think mostly draft, definitely. To me, it looked like, at least the first game, looked very much like Unicorns just choked more than Misfits. And yeah, I mean, not only that, of course, I think Misfits was also just the better team overall, but I think mostly just draft, yeah.
Also, honorable mention for Power of Evil, Caps. He was only 7th on the famous Caps list, or 6th.
I mean, no, 5.
Was he 5?
Yeah, he was 5.
Oh, 5 on the Caps list, but how much do you think he contributed to the Misfits' victory here?
Game 1, he didn't do that much, I think. It was kind of the Hans Summer show. But game 2, he definitely stepped up and was like the main carry of the game. And then game 3, it was like, it was just the team overall performing better. But as I said before the series even began, I definitely think Power of Evil was above Exile in like terms of skills, and it was definitely where they could rely on getting advantages. But the rest of the team just showed up as well, and yeah.
Every single person.
Yeah, and I think like that's the key thing here. You know, after like a 3-0, it's always kind of weird because you want to talk so much about how the other team made all these mistakes and all this was
we're
wrong.
trying to be positive.
But like we have to celebrate the fact that Misfits for basically the entire regular season would either be good in the early game and then fall short in the late game, or have a bad early game and then have to rely on the late game. This time around, they actually had very solid early games, and all 3 games, they had 0 issues pushing the advantage. They had 0 issues actually closing out the game. So it was like one Baron play where we were like, ooh, that was risky. Apart from that, everything else was super one-sided whenever Misfits got the advantage, all 3 games. And that was very impressive. They actually kept that going, but also where I think they got the big advantage in the draft was Unicorns Love at no point in this series had a better late game team fight than them. And that means it was really hard for Unicorns to actually get back in the games.
Yeah, as we're setting up for an interview with some of the Misfits, also Maxlor just in general targeting that mid lane was really good. But I also feel like having the Poppy as a counter pick to the Zac, it's something we didn't expect from him. Having the Kayn, even though it wasn't necessarily absolutely dominating, it is something you throw in the pick and ban that does also mess up the game plan. And I think as a jungler, he's also done his part with in this series through that.
100%. Like he had good early ganks. I think was there anything he could have done different? Probably not.
I think, I mean, for Maxlor, it looks super easy. I mean, it's like you have 3 winning lanes, right, in almost all 3 games. So it's just about where can you get the most kills, like basically spot the enter. So and mostly just towards mid lane, at least in the second game with the Poppy. And it just seemed super easy, and he had a lot of freedom.
Well, we've talked about almost everyone. Player of the series is Alphari, so then we have a mention for the top lane as well. Also someone who hadn't been in his groove, in his element that much during the summer split. We were wondering where the Alphari of the spring split was, where this huge potential. Hey, he had a fantastic series as well. Ignar, we don't want to leave anyone out. Daku, whoever's doing content for Misfits, great stuff. Great
Ben
stuff.
the owner.
Ben the owner, exactly. No, but overall, they absolutely stepped up. They are... well, stepping into that prophecy of the 1-year plan and the Worlds possibly and the playoffs, they are now looking for me like a really big contender for the rest of the playoffs.
I mean, 100%. And if G2 beats Splice tomorrow, then it is Misfits versus Fnatic. Caps and Justice during the games, they were scared, man. They were starting really questioning if they can actually still make the final after you see a 3-0 performance like this one.
And on that note, we're going to listen to some of the Misfits. They took a dominant win. They are one step closer to a spot at Worlds and that playoff championship. Let's head over to Dracos, who's ready with our jungler and mid laner.
Thank you very much, Shox. I am joined by Maxlor and Power of Evil. Now, first question, Maxlor, you come into playoffs, right off the bat, you 3-0 someone. You absolutely crush someone in the first round. How are you feeling right now?
Pretty fantastic, of course. It was, I expected a 3-1 actually due to how we played in scrims, but on stage we just transitioned so well and we just played like a team. It was beautiful League of Legends.
Now, Power of Evil on the other side, last season, spring split rather, it took a reverse sweep. It took like Misfits against the odds to come back against a 0-2 start against Splice. What's different about spring compared to summer that you're able to come so much more confident into these playoff matches?
Well, so first of all, we have way better communication than in Spring Split. Spring Split, Kakao didn't provide so much communication, more like mechanically skill. So it was really hard to figure out how to win games and how to draft. And today, I think we just went into the games really, really confident, and we had a really good week of scrims, and we just played really, really good as a team. I'm really proud of them.
Yeah, it looked really good across the board. Maxwell, I want to go back to some of the picks that you brought out today, Game 2, Game 3 specifically. Poppy, I want to start off. This was this is the Xerxes special, and you brought it out against the Zach, and honestly, when I saw it picked, I was stunned. How much planning, how much prep went into pulling this pick out on stage?
To be honest, we went into scrims this week to not pick Zach if Poppy's open, and we actually never played Poppy because no one picked Zach. So now on stage, he picked Zach, you know, and I had to convince my team to pick me Poppy, and it worked out pretty damn good, in my opinion.
Yeah, okay, so it did, but where does the confidence come from on your end to just go, hey, I've never played this in scrims, but I can do this, I can pull this out?
Well, he has a mid laner who tells me every day, Poppy's fucking broken against Zach. It's insanely strong, just pick it, and yeah, just backing you up, bro.
Well, to be honest, it's another tank, right? It's another Maokai. It's super easy to play. Just know where the Zach is and press W.
I mean, but even off the first gank, you were able to set up Power of Evil for success on the Lucian pick, Lucian into Kassadin. Was that always going to be an easy matchup, or was it the first blood coming in for Maxlor that just made it so easy for you?
I honestly didn't really understand the Kassadin into the Lucian, since Lucian destroys Kassadin early game. He has a magic shield and he's melee range, so you just make fun of him in the lane. And then we have Poppy for like really, really good dives, right? Because Poppy hard wins Zach, so he can contest all camps. We can even 2v2 dives in mid lane. That's what we called in game as well. That even if Zach comes, we just interrupt his jump, so his uses of defending the dive, and it was just a really, really easy game from that point. Since I get first blood and Lucian, who snowballs, is really, really OP.
Now, looking across it, this was once again a fantastic series, but I want to go back a little bit to the regular season. Honestly, it felt like a struggle for the last couple of weeks. You guys had some good games, you guys had some bad games. I think we as a broadcast team were very much saying Power of Evil is the only man who can carry this team. And while you did admittedly have a fantastic Lucian game, it feels like everyone, including yourself, Maxlor, Alfari, Hansama, Ignar, stepped up today. So for you, Maxlor, like, what is the difference maker here? Why are we seeing this change for Misfits now in the playoffs versus in the regular season?
I would say that we understand the draft and the game. Just our overall improvement has been fantastic. During LCS, we actually tried a lot of stuff on stage, like Graves jungle, which I never played again after that loss against Fnatic. Oh, I can't remember who it was. But yeah, we're working as a team really well. We understand what we want from each other. We got the bot lane duo pick sorted, and against Unicorns especially, we knew coming in what are their strong picks. So maybe it won't be as easy facing our next team. However, because we came in strong knowing that we just banned these few champions and they're off their comfort picks, we can take the series pretty convincingly.
I honestly believe that we outdrafted them in every game. I think our coaching staff did insanely good drafts today. Like every game, I felt really, really confident about like every matchup. We nearly got always like pushing lanes and the better outcome, I would say. So I would say like today we just like it's even more easily to go into the game with like a huge confidence boost by winning the draft.
So how much do you think this is going to be viable in the future to get these good drafts? Do you think you guys are going to be consistently able to outdraft at this level, or was a lot of your success today credited to the draft? And are you concerned that things might start to get a little bit harder if you can't have the same success?
Well, honestly, obviously, it's going to be harder since Fnatic is a really, really strong team. We face them in semis, I think. So
it's actually going to depend, but continue. We can break down that.
All right, but I don't think it matters that much. We always do kind of the same amount of draft, preparation, and I would just say it was an excellent job this time from Hiva and Hussein.
All right, so I'm going to break this down for you, Maxwell. This is going to be a question, but just to give some context for anyone watching. So in the event that Splice win tomorrow, you guys will play against H2K. In the event that G2 win, you'll play against Fnatic. So coming into semifinals, H2K or Fnatic, who would you rather be faced up against and why?
I would say, honestly, for myself, I'd rather face Fnatic, because if we beat them, there's a high chance of us auto-qualifying to Worlds. So I'd rather not let my fate be decided by someone else, and we have the chance to kind of get to Worlds by beating Fnatic.
So less about individual team strengths, worrying about how the teams are going to play, and more about just looking at championship points, bottom line, trying to qualify for Worlds.
I'm not really worried about any team. We're at a really good form right now, so.
All right, well, on your side, Power of Evil, Fnatic, you got to go up against Caps. H2K, you got to go up against Febiven. How do you feel about playing against either or as far as those mid laners go?
I think they're both really skilled, so for me, honestly, it doesn't matter. I would agree to what Max said, and I would prefer to face Fnatic as well.
All right, final question for both of you. How far are the Misfits going to make it? It was a 3-0 today. Can you make it all the way to the finals?
Of course.
Why would you even ask that?
I mean, I want to hear you say yes. That's why.
You want to hear? No, I don't think we're going to make it like serious.
It's over. It's over.
That
We
would
can't do
also
anything.
We're
be.
against Fnatic next. Like they're just the kings of Europe. What can we do at this point? We're taking a vacation now.
I mean, I just wanted to hear you guys be confident.
Time to get to Gauntlet.
All right, well, good to hear the confidence. Glad you guys are in a good enough mood to troll me here. But thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. Congrats again on the 3-0 over the Unicorns of Love and your place in Paris, as well as the semi-finals. That's going to do it for us here. We'll send it back to Shox and the desk to end out the day.
Oh my God, they just destroyed Dracos. I
mean,
saw what he was going
hey,
for. I saw what he was going for.
We have to ask our guests as well. Will you guys make it to Worlds?
Stop laughing at it.
If we're lucky. It's 50-50.
Maybe,
Hey, Martin, when was the last time we saw you doing an interview, eh? It's not as easy as it looks.
3-4 years ago with
Exactly.
a certain manager that...
Dreams.
Yeah.
Also,
Luckily, I never have to do it again.
Power of Evil was also so hyped he dropped the F-bomb the first time in his career on air. So
But he was right. Poppy is great.
Poppy was a great pick. There's a lot of interesting stuff in that interview. A couple of things. Housekeeping-wise, the Unicorns of Love now have to go through the gauntlet if they want to make it to Worlds. So, yeah, there's no way for them to make it on points just like that.
Yep.
And it is only the second time in Unicorns of Love's history in LCS that they haven't made semifinals, and also that they haven't made that third place or that final in the big arena. And I can just imagine that personally for the players, for a man, the way that team operates, that's probably a very big blow.
I mean, you spend so much time preparing for one best of 5. You go on stage, and the one time you have to perform for like 3 to 5 hours, you get 3-0 stomped, and nothing worked from the draft phase to the in-game point. Like, that's like the biggest disappointment ever as a player. So yeah, they're going to be super sad. They have 3 weeks now to get ready for Gauntlet. That's a lot of time to try and fix your issues. But maybe the team morale is super down and it becomes difficult.
Yeah, do you guys think that Unicorns of Love after this, will they still be able to have a good showing, or are the problems just too big?
I mean, not to put all in the flames, but to me it seems like they didn't change anything after. I mean, we were kind of similar to them at Rift Rivals, for example, and then it didn't seem like their style or our style worked in the current meta, and the meta has been sort of the same since then. And they didn't do anything to change. And even when they looked weak, they didn't do anything to change. And I mean, if they look weak in the playoffs and lose, why would they change again, right? I mean, it's just really weird. But
Yeah.
just I don't see them changing.
Yeah, we will see what happens. We won't be seeing them in the playoffs, though. Misfits Gaming is moving on. They have secured a spot in the semifinals, and they'll be going up against either HTK or Fnatic. If G2 wins tomorrow, it's Misfits Fnatic. If G2 lose tomorrow, it is Misfits H2K. And, well, we heard Maxlor saying that he would love to go up against Fnatic more for the applications and points, but you guys were giggling a bit, no? No, how would you feel going up against Misfits?
Misfits?
Yeah. After what you saw today.
I think
It looks better.
I think the same. I mean, I feel the exact same. Honestly, I expected them to win.
Yeah, you were right, actually.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, personally, I feel the exact same. I don't mind. I know what we can do, and I'm confident.
Yeah, Jess has already thought that Misfits was going to win. That doesn't change Caps, though. I mean, Misfits did prove you wrong today, and maybe.
Yeah, but then again, I think they didn't really get challenged by Unicorns. I think, especially from draft, it was just already like, it was over. They didn't get the lane, they didn't get the Rakan, and I think because we don't rely on like certain picks that much, we play everything. We have people like Soas who probably has the most separate champions played in the LCS or something like this, and I'm playing a new champion every week, and we are reckless with the Vayne last playoffs.
I remember.
Yo, he's firing the shots.
Jess is with Annie. I think they can't ban us out, so yeah.
I like
Message sent.
Drop all these different picks. I think that's just the key thing about today. Like, a large part of, I think, why Caps and myself got surprised about the 3-0 was obviously Unicorns of Love looked worse than expected, but I still think Misfits also looked better than expected. And I think that's a really important point to get across, because a lot of things that didn't work for them in the regular season actually clicked. And Max also talking about how they really feel like they figured out kind of the meta and how to draft right now. They're like winning lanes almost every single game and like counter jungle matchups in most of them. So a lot of credit there to Misfits for actually just being way better than Unicorns of Love and way better than the regular season Misfits.
A bit out of nowhere, right?
Yeah, I mean, kind of nowhere. They had a week to prepare for it, and clearly that worked.
Yeah, it did fantastic from the Misfits. If we take a look at what we have tomorrow, it's Splice versus G2. That's going to start at 5 p.m. Central European Summertime. And when we were looking ahead to these quarterfinals, we thought that this one was going to be close, and the one tomorrow was going to be heavily favored for G2. But now that Misfits have 3 old Unicorns of Love and maybe Splice with another week of practice.
I did hear someone over here mention that Splice might do really well.
Oh, really? Is it the prediction
me?
god,
Is that
Jessus?
you?
I have a feeling. I mean, honestly, I think the G2 versus Splice series is gonna go 5 games, 90% chance.
Right? So why do you think it's closer than we had thought?
I think both teams are good, and I think in this series the difference is that one team is fine, decent, good, maybe, and one team is terrible. And I think the Splice G2 series is gonna be completely different. Good teams.
I mean, if you go off the regular season or summer split, you wouldn't maybe have said, but they're in different groups. They've only played each other once, so it's kind of hard to predict at what level both teams are. Caps, do you agree with Jessus that it's going to go that close?
I mean, I definitely think it will go. I mean, I don't know if it will go 5 games, but I definitely think it's a close series and it go either way. I think Splice is looking a lot stronger from scrims than they have been like the rest of the split. And I think G2 are not looking as strong, even though they have had like a struggling split. I don't think they have fixed it. I think they're still struggling. I think they look all right, but they're not the G2 from last split who were dominating and who was like the first place team we saw last split.
Yeah. Is the seed of doubt planted for G2? Because we talked about this, how...
I mean, I'm casting it, so I hope for 5 games.
You hope for 5 games.
I really want both teams to be super good.
Well, we all hope that. And let's be honest, it is kind of cool to see a G2 that's not crushing. We might get 5 games. It's going to be very close. It's a good start to the playoffs. Maybe it will all be upsets from this point on.
If today was an upset.
If today was an upset,
You know,
right?
that's
yeah, that is to be left in the middle. That is to be left in the middle.
I would actually rather want G2 to win,
Right.
just because I'd rather face Misfits than Splice. Yeah.
Okay. Do you also want the G2 Fnatic final, or are you okay with
I would
HK?
also, yeah, I would also want that.
Okay,
No,
okay.
definitely G2 over HK in the final. Definitely.
All right. Well, we will see what happens. It's been a very good start to the playoffs so far, even though it was only 3 games. A bit of an upset, I'm going to say. But across the Atlantic, the NA/LCS playoffs are going to start later tonight. Cloud9 versus Team Dignitas in their very first quarterfinal. Be sure to tune in for that. Does anyone want to make predictions? The ex-NA resident? Team Dignitas or Cloud9?
Cloud9.
I'm going to C9 as well.
C9?
C9.
C9 3 times. Well, here in Europe, it is time for us to log off for the night. Thank you guys very much for watching. We'll be back tomorrow for more playoffs and the ULCS. Almost. See you tomorrow.
He's going to jump away with the flash, but Handsama on the chase. One more auto. First blood, Misfits.
Look mid. Catch. Coming. We can get
Nice.
my bad. I played this a bit.
No, wait, I don't believe you.
Wait, why not?
Because your predictions are awful. They want this. They want a grand team fight, Vedius. Your predictions are coming true. The root, the knockback, the kills, the Misfits as they clean up after the Baron. Before he gets the Quadra, give us a Penta and Sama to start us off. The EU LCS quarterfinals start off with a Pentakill. A devastating performance by Misfits and a commanding victory for them as they go 1-0 up over the Unicorns of Love.
Let's fight.
UOL will lose one and they'll lose a second as Xerxes goes down. The Misfits team fighting has been sublime. And the Stand United Unbreakable, he goes down before Chachi can join, and now Xerxes in the midst, a great route, let's bounce, but he just brings all the Misfits into the rest of his team. Misfits, a triple kill for Alfari. Authoritative throughout this win, throughout this series, and they will be 1 game away from the semi-finals and from Paris. The TP comes in because Hillsang and Samux have joined the fight. Here comes the teleport from Alfari. Misfits want a 5v5 in the mid lane. First blood to PoE, and Samux will fall as well.
Nice, good calling.
Misfits on the engage. They get...
No.
And Sama goes in. Can't quite get the kill, but he'll take down. Visit Chachi falls for it, but 4 for 1 in favor of the Misfit. Chachi's dead. So is Xerxes. So are the Unicorns.
Paris.
And Misfits are going to close out this game. A triple kill for Hansama. And you may call them Misfits, but today they are conquerors as they take down UOL 3-0.